Well, we are gathered here today to talk the post-mortem of the first edition of Anime Revolution Toronto in 2025. It's a space heater 2 weeks after the last, and it's just the same two people, Mike Nicolas, James Austin. James actually decided to trek through the treacherous Toronto weather. Actually, it's probably worse outside of Toronto. So we're doing this actually in person at the 6 Point studio.
How do you know, Mike, you're not actually all alone in the studio doing this and I'm just an AI creation?
Well, we'll get to that a bit later. Amazon might have something to say about that. Wow, that's in the news over the last... Here's your what's the phrase? 24-hour news cycle? Is that the phrase, or is it 48? Well, it's
24.
It's made the it certainly has made the rounds. We have to talk about that.
Not the first one, of course.
No, but it's noteworthy.
The first one, obviously, professionally, that someone has used AI and stuff like that. There have been some, I think, on YouTube that they speculated a fan dub, so to speak, and they used AI to massage what they were doing. But first time we've seen professionally.
Yeah, this is going to be the talk for a little bit, I think. So, all right. So... And we're just doing some tests here because we're, how do I put this? We just tried running a couple of microphones. Well, we've had to switch the microphones already today because I got lazy initially as I did the setup, and I brought out the old Apex mics that we used for many, many years. And there's just one problem with those. We used them for many, many years. And they had shown their age with a lot of hissing and, a lot of interference. So I didn't want to bring out the Shure mics, the newer mics we've been using, but didn't have much of a choice in this case. Yeah, just didn't have much of a choice in this case. And they do sound a little bit better. I'm sure as you're hearing this, there's a little bit more background. There's a little background noise still, but not any snow type hissing noise. But that's just the nature of the studio itself, since it's not really a studio, it's a home. So, I mean, that's just the delay so far. But it's a very minimal setup here, which is probably just as well since we're doing a space heater, we're kind of throwing it together. But we did want to do something within a week of Anime Revolution happening. So while all the thoughts were still fresh in the mind, it was a busy weekend last weekend for our fandom, for general geek fandom. Actually, things are racing towards the end of the year, whatever form of geek fandom you're into. Overwatch Champions series is finishing up. The world championships for Overwatch are completing themselves this weekend. I think we're down to the final 3 in that. Surprise, surprise, only one Korean team remains, though, I think, from what I remember, because there was a battle of the last two teams in the lower bracket today. The last two teams are EMEA teams, so Middle East and European-based teams, although they probably have a bunch of Koreans too, because that's just the way esports is sometimes, especially in Overwatch. Oh, well, maybe some Chinese too, who knows. I haven't really kept up. I haven't kept up with competitive Overwatch since Overwatch League ended a couple of years ago. So that's just me there. Toronto Game Expo, I know you'll talk about that a little bit later on, and Anime Revolution last week. All right, we had this discussion 2 weeks ago when we talked about the merits of having an anime convention this late in the year, in basically late November, and away from the rest of the heart of the anime and probably the fan convention season, or the science fiction anime geekdom fan conventions. Mm-hmm. What did we are we going to reset some of our thoughts on that, or do we really like? What's your take on still after Anime Revolution and Toronto Game Expo? What's your take on late year items like that, on late year conventions?
I don't mind later conventions and stuff like that. Obviously, we had a few more layers sometimes than we normally do, but actually the last weekend it had warmed up, so we didn't have to wear as many layers as we may have thought we might have had to wear and stuff like that.
I wore my heavy coat. I was boiling through much of that weekend.
Yeah, no, I was wearing
much of that day.
I was wearing a sweater, and then I had the lighter jacket on and stuff like that, and worked my way through. But once it gets cold, it gets cold. But I know they probably had a check code anyway, so I'm sure we could have done that at either event and stuff like that. But it's nice to have something else to look forward to, as we like to say, and then different type of event compared to some of the other events we've been at throughout the year, and probably similar to our thoughts we've said before on the podcast about how AniRevo compares, and we talk IFF and Anime Toronto, and Anime Revolution was a part of those cons and stuff like that. So if you'd been to those, you probably wouldn't miss much, because it was similar experience. They definitely did some tweaking since the Anime Revolution people obviously had full control this time, and it was probably similar to anyone who had been to the Vancouver one. I'm guessing it was close to what that experience was there and stuff like that.
I think the big difference might be scale. At least I'm of the belief that that could be the biggest difference. So Anime Revolution, I think, from what my understanding, is the biggest anime event that happens in Vancouver during the year, during the year there. And I would gather it's like, this was, the problem is this is so unfair to make from a Torontonian standpoint, because ultimately when you think of any, it's basically goes this way in Toronto. It's Anime North, and everything's compared to Anime North, no matter what, for anime gatherings in this city. Anime North starts, and then that's the benchmark, that's the reference point, and no matter what, whether it's Fan Expo, and I will say Fan Expo, even 20 years ago, regardless. I mean, it's not even on the radar now, but Fan Expo, IFF, Anime Toronto, Anime Revolution Toronto, Festa, Anime Festa, which is a smaller scale convention that happens around here. Mm-hmm. Everything is compared to Anime North. It's an unfair comparison in terms of sheer size.
I think our comparison point is, we always said it would be the same for this, is the older CN animes and stuff like that. Basically, that was the comparison. And yes, they were both in the Metro Convention Center and stuff like that, but it was still a similar type of con that was being run. It was not a fan run con and stuff like that. It was a corporate con. They definitely were trying to get some guests to get people in the seats, and it does look like Anime Revolution definitely did try that with their Japanese guests. That looked to be one of the biggest draws, along with the VTuber they had present as well. So, and they did have some English voice actors from the Toronto area, some older Sailor Moon actors and stuff like that. So,
I mean, as I said, when it comes down to it, it's ultimately an apples oranges type comparison too.
And then the other thing is, as we said, a smaller scale, that even compared to what we had seen previously when they were working with IFF and Anime Toronto and stuff like that. IFF, they had, as you said, that basement, that theater type thing, because they actually had a concert and stuff like that. So who knows if that's something they want to think about in the future. It was basically just, you had the dealer's room on the second floor in a part of that one open area. And then in the north building, it was the bottom part. And they had, instead of doing, actually it was about the same, but I think the room sizes, the way they did it before, when they were with Anime Toronto and IFF, they had that one big room we went into.
And that's where
and then beside there, they had the two rooms there kind of split up into panel rooms. And one year they had a video room in between. But this year we had the one big room still. And I'm not sure if I think it was the same size as they had each of those other times. And then they had two panel rooms that were bigger on the opposite side of the north building on the main floor.
I'm of the belief, like when I look back on the size of I'm not totally sure about the size of the main events room. I'll call it the events room, right?
Yeah, the main events, and where opening ceremony, closing ceremony, where the main events, like the guests,
is that was roughly the same area where Fate's Day Heaven's Feel was shown.
And I think it was the same, and it was the same size and stuff that.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure.
I think it was exactly. I think it was the exact same for that. And then I know for Fate's Day, when they did the thing with the sound director for that one, they did that one down in the basement where they did the concert. And that one was well done because it was on the concert stage and stuff like that. So they were able to use that again. So it's a matter of can they use it throughout the weekend, I guess is the question.
That event back in 2019 was I thought really well done because the way they configured the seating for that panel, and I don't know what the concert was like that night. Which was
the night before, yeah.
Like the seats were more Coliseum like. They more surrounded the stage than usual. So you could get seats on like to the left and to the direct left and right of the stage. So like almost runway style, right? So at least that's as I remember it. But the seating, the way that was laid out in 2019, I came away thinking well of it. But that was 2019, and you wonder the future if that's a scenario we'll eventually see again. But I guess technically this is 1 year, and to be clear, just to underscore the point, Anime Revolution makes it very clear that this is a new con.
Yeah, year one, basically.
They refer to it as a year one, right? They refer to the event as a year one event. And that's fine. You take them at their word. It's just, if anybody in the know knows a bit about the past, about this style, about this the feel of the show from the past, or the past shows that had similar feeling, and that Anime Revolution had something in that. So it's not something you can totally escape. That stigma from the past two iterations, past two attempts, like that's still there. But okay, take them at their word. It's often referred to as a new management too. So we'll take them at their. So that's to be taken at word.
And I know we had discussed after the last one, the Anime Toronto one, I guess, that it was the Anime Revolution, the head of that I guess talked after that, because there were still some kinks, as they said, in the dealer's room, especially with the Artist Alley and a few of the others, how they set up, that main stage, concert stage they had in there, which I guess originally in those other two events was closer to where the food was. And then where they put the Artist Alley and all of them were close to there. So I guess there was an issue there, and they kind of rejigged it a bit where they put autographs instead of the back left, they moved it to the front left. So when you get basically into the dealer's room, you just go left and away you go to get your autographs. And for the big autographs, that probably helps. And then it helped when we talked later about the autographs because they could move them along the wall and stuff like that behind the main stage, which was then kind of beside it. They had a small game area in between, and then they had some dealers in the center parts and stuff like that. Then the Artist Alley crafts and stuff like that were on the further right, and they were further away. So it's not like the other parts, I guess, were disrupting other parts.
Yeah, actually, when you put it in those terms, it was better. I mean, I thought, yeah, the areas were a little bit more distinct, and people who really wanted to be in the sections, in the among the vendors, and then the Artist Alley, there were more clear lines, and you didn't have an autograph line that snaked into those areas.
Like the first year for IFF, that was one that was a big one. Yeah, 2019.
That was a huge issue and probably turned off a lot of those vendors at the time.
Well, it looks like I think most of those spaces were filled for both the artist alley and the vendors. I'm not sure how well they did.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But there were there might have been a few empty spots, but not many. So they probably did.
I saw one empty table in the artist side.
Yeah, probably the artist alley, but that's about it.
Everything, yeah.
Which is impressive considering I'll say a few words on Toronto Game Expo, which was happening on the Saturday and Sunday of the same weekend at the X Grounds at the Bear Living Center. And when I was walking through there, they're kind of swap meet like, so they have a lot of different vendors like regular people, actual game stores and stuff like that, or people that go to these different events to sell games. But they have an artist alley and a cosplay thing for some of the tables, and all their, I'd say, artist alley and their crafters and stuff like that, they were pretty well filled. So it's not like they hurt each other and stuff like that, because there could be a bleed over between people that do video games, anime, Japanese culture, but it didn't seem to hurt either of them from what I could see, which was nice to see and stuff like that. I saw a lot more crocheting things of them crocheting Pokemon and other game characters at Toronto Game Expo, funny enough, compared to the one at AniRevo Toronto, which was funny. So more crafters, I think, there, I guess.
And there weren't as many, and you didn't see as many video game stuff at Anime Revolution, because I guess they were over at the other, at Game Expo.
Yep. I guess at the X Grounds.
So that, I mean, that, just to be clear on that, there was a little bit more open space in that sense. So what do you want? So from this point, what do you want to talk about? I mean, when it comes down to it, the main event, were the Japanese guests, I guess.
And they had one that physically came and then one that came virtually and stuff like that for one panel, which was kind of a nice way to go about and stuff like that. And I'm sure there's probably many other, other events that use that now and stuff like that, that they feel, okay, we have the technology, we can make sure that we can get, virtually talk to them, and that you have to make it work and stuff like that. And in this case, it worked. You probably have the names on the guests and stuff like that, because it's escaping me for now.
Oh, no, it's escaping me as well. But
I know for the virtual guest, which was from the main character he had played from To Eternity and stuff like that. It was, we'll get to that one later, but I know it was interesting that we had the sound director for that series, Takadera-san, I believe.
Takadera. Yeah.
Takadera. Yeah, he was there for that, and for the guest for Alia and stuff like that. So I know it probably helped to have him there to coordinate that panel for that virtual appearance and stuff like that. So maybe that helps and stuff like that, because maybe that could be something Anime North could think about, because I know a lot of people talk about Japanese guests and that at Anime North and stuff like that. And maybe we got to think about a different way. Have we thought about, okay, yes, it's a fan run event. Yes, we love greeting, meeting, getting together, celebrating our fandom. But if for a Japanese guest, if we can't always get someone there, physically, which sometimes could happen, maybe we look at virtually and stuff like that. And yes, there's no autographs to be had, but they still have an experience they may not forget, right?
Right. That's a fair statement. And maybe, that's a discussion for, that the way Anime North will handle that in the future, that's going to come up again, right?
No, it's just a kernel for thought for any convention and stuff like that. And it's not to say theirs was the perfect way to go about and stuff like that, if we want to say that, but it was seamless, at least in that panel. You were there with me, that, as you said, they used, I'm not sure whose phone they used, but it was there for Takadera and the translator. But then they had the fella the main character.
It was Kawashima Reiji. So
Kawashima
Reiji, who plays Fushi.
Fushi, yes. So they had him on both screens and stuff like that. And he seemed to be able to hear us and all that. And he was happy to talk to us. There was the time difference, of course, so that kind of can limit how you do those type of things. So we were 8 p.m. on a Saturday for us in Toronto. And when we were talking from there, he was talking to us in the future at 10 a.m. Tokyo time.
He was able to see the fans through a smartphone that the translator was holding at the main table. Mm-hmm. But if you were there, if you saw it, you saw the translator at the table holding a phone as well. Or there was a smartphone. That was the way Kawashima was probably seeing the audience. Mm-hmm. And then they, of course, a few other things, maybe microphones and other tech and connections that just had to be made so that Kawashima can be heard and he can hear things from Toronto. But in terms of cameras, that's and what he would have seen, that's probably through that smartphone.
Mm-hmm. And I guess depending on the guest, like I think probably because they had to do it at 8 p.m. on the Saturday, I thought there would be less people. There definitely was less people for that in the main event room, which is too bad. But I think most people enjoyed the conversation that happened there and stuff like that about them talking about To Eternity from season 1, season 2, and now season 3, which is going to be at a turning point because it's 2 cores, but it's definitely more slice of life, more lighthearted compared to the other 2 seasons that preceded it because of the growth the main character Fushi had to go through and stuff like that.
Mm. Do you want to talk about that briefly, and then, or do you want to talk about the To Your Eternity panel first, or do you want to get to the Uesaka one?
We can do Osaka after, since this one is, you know what I mean. You were already here, and it's a shorter panel. So what were your thoughts? It was only
an hour. Yeah, it was. I didn't make too many notes because I've never seen To Your Eternity, to be quite honest with you.
And Viz has the manga. Sorry, not Viz. I forget who has the manga now. I think it was Kodansha. Kodansha has the manga. This is what I meant to say. But
and the run of the manga recently ended. Actually, earlier this year. I mean, my notes. The only notes I got, it was more about. It was talking more about the plot to this point. Less technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, much of the talk was about the atmosphere in the recording studios as this was being done, because it was, I think the description I got was it just had a different atmosphere, slightly lighter tone, because of you just said the slice of life tone of the, and they're in
present day and stuff like that. The previous seasons were in eras before that and stuff like that. It's not quite our world, but the first episode, as he had talked about, remember, there were only 2 people being recorded in the first episode of season 1. And that's because if you read the manga or you watch the first episode, basically what happens is Fushi is not even like a person or something. Like he's basically created by this god and stuff like that. And he basically has to go through like the knockers or the antagonists that come after him for those 2 seasons, right? Just to give you an idea. But that first episode, as he said, he was basically, this is my first role. I'm alone here and I'm working my way through. And it was an interesting experience for him as he got more of the cast came in and he got to experience it, because that first episode, it was basically, he's a wolf. He becomes a wolf. He takes over this thing of a wolf. So that's because, as they said, these different people he meets along the way, they become a part of him, so to speak. And so he becomes a wolf. And then he goes and he's in basically what I would describe as almost like he's in none of it on either Ellesmere Island or on Baffin Island. Do you know what I mean? Like it is cold. He's like rocky and all this other stuff. And he goes and finds this cabin. And then there's a boy in this cabin and everyone else has kind of left because they want to go somewhere warmer. And then he befriends him and then he kind of stays with him in this wolf form. And then by the end of that episode, he becomes the boy along with the wolf and stuff like that, and works his way from that desolate area down to the next part and stuff like that. That was a lot warmer than the none of it like area he was in before.
Mm. But I mean, it just sounded like he was doing a monologue for much of that episode.
Yeah, and so you go through that, and there are action scenes like with him battling the knockers and stuff like that. and through these last 2 seasons. And then you come to this where it's kind of like he's now in this new era and stuff like that, similar to modern day Japan and stuff like that, completely different atmosphere and vibe of we're in the school setting and stuff like that. And you know what I mean? And so
Fish
it is
out of water.
it's going to turn probably, as we know, because it's getting close to the end of this season of anime, and it's 2 seasons. So it's 2 course. So they're at about 8-9 episodes at the moment into season 3.
So that's the rundown of the whole atmosphere of the series. I guess it's on Crunchyroll, obviously, and I loved how they just pressed it's on Crunchyroll. So watch it on Crunchyroll.
Yeah, that was the end of and I had made note of that to you there, Mike. That yes, everyone knows that when they're out there, I guess talking to people outside, it's like, yeah, you can go watch on Crunchyroll, because remember we were so used to so many different players, right? So it's like, yeah, it's on Crunchyroll. You can go watch it there.
Now it's just.
But yeah, no, Crunchyroll has the streaming rights. All of it is there. It's dub and sub. I can't remember how much they've dubbed of the English of season 3 yet, because remember, there's sometimes a bit of a delay. You can buy season 1 physically on Blu-ray from Viz for the whole first season, which is 22 episodes. So they did 22 episodes for the first season, 22 for the second season, and this one's likely going to be 22 as well.
So let's go through a few more of these notes. As I said, it was less technical. It was less technical on the talk of the panel, which is a slight contrast, not a big one, but slight contrast to what was talked about in the Alia discussion when Takadira and Uesaka talked there, and that actually wasn't all that long. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. So I'm going to go through. Let me go through my notes, and then feel free to interject, okay? And some of it's probably just some voiceful, like how a bit of notes on how seiyuu and voice actors maybe approach the roles too, and how much the sound director really does get involved, right? Studio had a different atmosphere because of slightly lighter tone of the plot for season 3. Takadira-san, okay, I wrote this note. Takadira-san seems to come in to adjust the initial approach of the seiyu's visions for the characters. So the seiyuu, the voice actors got the role for a reason. They were able to convince initially, like, whoever made those decisions, the producers, and I guess to some degree the director as well.
Yeah, the director and that.
They had a vision for the role for the role, and it's stuck with. But there isn't, like, it doesn't sound like there's too many changes that happen beyond that point. Like the voice directors, at least from Takadira's standpoint, doesn't really do too much to change the vision visions, I'm not sure is the right word. The approach that the seiyuu already have to the character. Maybe a few tweaks for the sake of technical reasons and pacing, and just to make it work with the animation. But really the approach to the character as depicted by the voice actors is as what was auditioned for and ultimately agreed to. But there isn't much more tweaking beyond that.
Yeah, and sometimes I know that in regards to this series, as he was talking about quite a bit, sometimes he would have to do, the character playing Fushi would have to voice the roles of the people that had become a part of him and stuff like that. Or he was saying that I know some say you were kind of to him asking him things and stuff like that. So it was an interesting contrast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Of how they wanted to do the voices because it would go together with his, you know what I mean?
It just sounded like, and as I said, as somebody who hasn't seen the series yet, like it sounded like Fushimi was, not Fushimi, that's the character. It sounds a little bit like Kawashima was placed in a very, very unique position for his first major role, right? I mean, they talked about how this was a very different, this was a very different first major role for anybody, and that he had a few different challenges that you wouldn't expect, and you're kind of touching on that. There was I put a note saying Uchida Aya, who stars in this season, who features a little bit more prominently this season, made some of those recording sessions a little bit fun, and I put the phrase "pushed a few buttons." But I'm
probably in a positive way. You know what I mean?
In a positive way. But you said, but like we're saying, it was a slightly different atmosphere in the studio, and I think Uchida
in a different setting, yeah, and
Uchida
it would
had
work for
fun
that.
with that. It sounded like. On Kawashima, Takadira thinks that Kawashima and his voice is better suited for tragedy. And Kawashima thought it was an interesting, liked the overall assessment of that. What do we know about Kawashima's past roles? That's the thing. But this is his first major, so you can't. I guess it's kind of an unfair comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there probably isn't too much to really say because, well, I mean, I'm looking at his filmography, and frankly speaking, I don't recognize most of these titles, quite honestly. So I guess we'll see what type of challenges when he does other types of shows and other types of genres and tones. But he just Takadira kind of brought that out. Kawashima, for his part, wonders how similar he is to Fushimi, the character he plays. But he does like the dark stories. He does like the idea of dark stories, but with a tinge of hope. And he's kind of angled his approach to the character that way. And then my last. The last point I made, as I said, I didn't make too many notes, but it's also a very interesting point to me. To Your Eternity's author, Yoshitoki Oima, was present for all the recordings.
Yeah, no, for all the recordings. It sounds like, which is interesting. Not all the time that happens.
Yeah, no, I don't know of that type of thing happening. And, I'm not aware of
no, they might be there for the first episodes or a few episodes and stuff like that, just to get an idea and stuff like that. Depends how involved sometimes you may want to be, right?
Well, we are in an age now where creators tend to get a little bit more heavily involved in adaptations, right? After after the Cowboy Bebop debacle, and then with One Piece going on with its creator, Oda. Yeah, with Oda being more heavily involved with that, and you've heard some darker stories about the involvement of the creator sometimes, buddy, and you certainly heard stories of the anime directors butting heads with the source material creator more than a few times. So the only thing that I never really took note of is what the author's impressions might have been throughout the process. But if we are where we are, something tells me they're okay.
I would say if you're at season 3, a few episodes in, I'd say they've been doing a pretty good job. I think most people have been happy compared to what they've read in the manga if they've done both. Yeah.
So there's that. But those are my thoughts on that's as much as I was able to write down during the To Your Eternity panel. And my notebook is chicken scratch whenever I do these things. So.
But that was a nice thing to have to watch, late at night and stuff like that. Yeah, it wasn't like some of the other things we had. Remember they had different movies like the Fate Stay Night, the second movie, or I think it was the first Made in the Abyss movie.
Day we had back in 2019.
That was
so we
there
didn't
too.
have those type of screenings.
Yeah, stuff like that. So this was a nice thing to have, in the main room and stuff like that in its place, to get people in there.
I think it's a sign of the times too. Mm-hmm. Right? Just to harp on that for a couple minutes. Okay. Exclusive screenings weren't the thing, or weren't a thing here this year at Anime Revolution. And that was probably
I'm not expecting them, but
the three iterations of this show, I think the first one had cornered the market on really something to watch. I think it was the first one because, like you said, we had a Made in Abyss feature, we had a Fate Stay feature, we had a Mecha Ude preview, which was quite a bit of a talk at the time because of its crowdfunding aspect.
Anime Toronto had the Firefighter Daigo episode 1 before it had premiered and stuff like that. And remember, Takadira-san had done sound direction on that and stuff like that. So he had a little thing before they did the episode. Then we played the episode, and then he had a few things after that.
Which I didn't see, but...
Kevin saw that with me.
Yeah. But, and which also begs the question, is there anything Takadira does not do? Right? And it was cool. And that's cool. But... that wasn't, and now we get to the other panel because Takadira-san appeared at that too, at least at the beginning.
Well, I guess before we get to that, you have to feel the thing of things that can go wrong at a convention, stuff like that. And yes, virtual guest, it could be technology, but with actual guests, it could be how are they getting to said convention, stuff like that, especially if they're the main Japanese guest and there's only like one of them, or insofar as voice actor seiyuu and stuff like that. What happens if something happens to their flight? And we saw that in action with this convention and stuff like that, because I'm sure it does happen from time to time. And there was a lot of communication on that. And I know you said something about when we were talking about before.
Sumire Urisaka's flight was canceled. Her first flight into the Toronto area was canceled. I guess it was from Japan.
And I'm not sure if she had a connection. They went to Vancouver, maybe because they're from Vancouver, to make sure they could take her to Toronto. So somewhere along the line, there was a canceled flight and it put them back. And we know from their previous ones, the shows they had done, some of those guests, I know the guests from Anime Toronto, remember when we saw them, it sounded like they got in not the day of or the day before, they got there a number of days before because they went to Niagara Falls and stuff like that. Whereas this time, it looks like they were cutting it close and stuff like that. Maybe they were expecting her to get in early on the Friday or the Thursday, and because of time zones and all those other things, it kind of hamstrung them because she wasn't able to get in till later on the Friday. So they had to cancel the Alia panel that they were going to have on the Friday afternoon. And her autograph session was moved on the Friday because she still wanted to sign some autographs, but she came in late, supposedly in the afternoon on the Friday. And then by the time she got to the Metro Toronto Convention Center, supposedly she did, I guess, at 9 started signing autographs for some people in the lobby and stuff like that, the Metro Convention Center, which is probably very nice of her to do. And supposedly she was doing that for a while. And then they basically said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to merge her Friday and Saturday panels. So the Alia panel, that was with Takadera-san, basically merged with her Q&A panel on the Saturday and became, instead of 2-hour panels, it became, I think, hour and a half. And then I think they extended her autograph session on the Saturday a bit, so.
To 90 minutes, which turned out not to be enough, but we'll get to that afterwards. The first, really the Alia talk was only for about 15, 20 minutes at most.
And I think some of that had to do with the fact that obviously it was packed in the room for that panel. So when you were going into it, it snaked around a bit for the line for that one. And I would say that for that, I think they had an idea that they still wanted to do a bit of the Alia, and that was a part of the beginning. but because of how many people that they knew they were going to do for the Q&A, which we had seen them do in the previous 2 iterations with IFF and Animatron, where they have a few questions from the moderator, then they go to the questions from the audience, that they were probably going to do more Q&A and stuff like that, and that would take a little more precedence of the time.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what happened.
There was still good stuff that we learned from it would be interesting to see what more they would have done in the hour with the Alia panel with Takadera and Usaka, but it was interesting. Like, she came in a maid outfit and stuff like that. She was ready to show off in that. She was in a maid outfit and stuff like that, and she's talking about
played to the crowd right away. Had him in the palm of her hand.
Yeah, no. So, but and she had a lot of energy, because I have to say, like, with all that, with the flights and stuff like that, getting in late, then doing the autographs, then probably only getting so much sleep, if you can get sleep because you're jet lagged, and then coming in, and she had a lot of energy, which is really amazing.
She had already said she had seen the CN Tower already.
Yeah,
she had gone up it, and she was and later in the day she was gonna go to
the aquarium, the Ripley's aquarium.
Which,
yeah,
I guess is a very Japanese thing to want to do. So,
well, we've taken them all, as you said. They've taken them to Niagara Falls. We know 20 years ago, depending on the events, I know CN Anime, they'd taken them to the Blue Jays games, when the Blue Jays, you could just walk and get some good tickets, because I know
it was great.
One of them watched the Yankees and the Jays, and
Matsui was on that team.
Yeah, I think
like 20 some odd years.
I think that was Henry Goto, and I forget the fellow that did Serial Experiments, Lane Technolize, and Habanme Reme. I forget his name now, but he was the one that was the guest that year. So they had went, I guess, and just got tickets, and were basically in the lower part watching the Yankees and the Jays, and watching Matsui.
I just know they were tickled about that. Mm-hmm. I remember them mentioning it.
No, they mentioned. I remember they mentioned it in the panel and all that. They were
didn't know the Yankees were in town. We were happy. They were so ecstatic to see the Yankees.
And because of how we were at that time in the East, was they could just go and get some really nice tickets and stuff like that. A nice price.
Those were the days when the Jays sucked. But they've stopped. Now they've stopped sucking. Anyway, okay, so.
But all the energy in that, like, impressive, considering like it definitely a shortened schedule. You know what I mean? And she was engaged with the crowd and stuff for all that. So
yeah. Okay. So you want me to start going through my notes again, and then
I guess probably for the Alia part and stuff like that, the one thing that stood out to me, and I think you probably had it in your notes, was, as we know, she does know a bit of Russian and stuff like that. She took a bit of that for Usagi.
Not just a bit, she's fluent.
Yeah, she definitely. But the thing is, as they had said, I guess she had done a bit for Alia before. And that's what probably helped her get this role. She had said in one of the questions, which makes sense, because sometimes some of the seiyuu and voice actors do radio dramas and stuff like that were before the anime. And then that kind of gets them the role, you know what I mean? Because they did such a good job. So it was something similar. She
made it clear she didn't have to audition for this. And I joked at the time when I found out that she knew Russian. I joked, and that she played her, and she plays Alia, and she knows Russian. I joked, if she didn't get this role, there would have been a riot, I thought. But
it was still interesting because one part she had to speak Russian for a while, so they did have on in the room and stuff like that when they were doing the Japanese dub and stuff like that. Supposedly, I guess what you would call a Russian language expert to help them and stuff like that, and that. She said definitely she needed a lot of energy to get through a few parts, and especially the one part where it was, I guess, the speech in that, where there was longer amount of Russian. Final episode. Yeah. And supposedly they spent 2 hours with the language expert, her and Takadera, getting that done, and they made it happen. But they said, very grueling and tiring and stuff like that. And she talked about needing the energy and stuff like that, and that she had built it up over the course of her career. But the other thing that was interesting was, yes, she can speak Russian, but we're talking about an anime and stuff like that. And to Japanese ears, and maybe even to our ears, what Russian would sound like. It sounds like a rougher language and stuff like that. So that talk of trying to make it cuter and stuff like that. So trying to make Russian sound, I guess, cuter in an anime way. And I never really thought about that and I'm not sure you thought about that when we were originally watching the show and stuff like that. And that was one of the things they wrestled with and got to, I guess, a happy medium and stuff like that supposedly Takadera and Usaga talked about.
It's interesting. You hit on two interesting points. And I'm going to give a personal anecdote on those points. Where I work now, and I don't talk, and it's not where I've mentioned where I've worked in the past, but where I work now, I work among Japanese speakers and Russian speakers, and they get along really well. And I know that the ones that I work with get along really well, actually. So that's a question actually I would like to ask them. I haven't had a chance to ask, but it's something I'm really curious about now that I've heard it in these terms, right? That the kawaii factor may not exist in Russian, and they had to get that to translate over. Because that was the object. Because that was the purpose of her using the Russian in the first place, of the character using the Russian. So you had your.
Because they had the first part where she said Takadera, and they said, okay, you say a few lines, and they said,
How do we,
how are we going to, and so it was interesting to get to, I guess, as you said, that kawaii or anime or Japanese pop
cute,
level.
That cute level, right? That kawaii level. And I would imagine that would have been the word. Do not at me, please. But it was important. But when I think about it, and when I look back on that part of the revelation and the statements, they needed it. They needed it to be that way to get that comedic effect, to get that impact whenever she pulled that card out, whenever she used those phrases, because the idea was to, disarm Kuze in the process, right? To get Kuze, to knock Kuze off his game whenever she did it. Right? And I think their approach to getting that effect, it wasn't and as somebody who doesn't really know more than one language, because you don't speak another language yourself, right?
Correct.
So I don't think neither of us can really appreciate this, right? It's not as easy as just knowing the words. You have to get the tone down. You have to get your timing. You have to get the timing down. You have to get the intent down, right? And sometimes two languages have trouble translating into each other just on those counts. Forget just the words. Words is a big part of it, yes, but there's always more to it. Once again, it's not how you make it's not what you say, it's how you make them feel. Which is a line which is like a paraphrased Maya Angelou line, which I constantly use about translation. Right? So, and the fact that they put it in these terms kind of only, at the very least, I feel secure in that feeling. And maybe I probably would appreciate that idea more if I knew another language. But coming back down and another point on the other point, and I'm just looking at this. Yes, Takadera heard the Uesaka in the audio drama and had to change it slightly, so there was some of the changes that had to be done, and I guess it's once again coming back to the point of making it work for an anime. Right? Language teacher in Russian was present during recording, had to balance between cute and accurate. So there was a prior discussion there. Yeah. And going back to that key moment in the final episode when, remember, to that point in the series, have you seen?
Yes.
Okay. She only used the Russian was only one-liners.
Yeah, that she was saying under her breath and stuff like that because she didn't think he could understand and stuff like that.
So that moment when she speaks formally in Russian, And I think that's what happens here too. She's using that kawaii tone when muttering the Russian in the previous episodes, but she had to be a lot more formal with her Russian speech during the actual speech in the final episode. She couldn't just use the same tone, and I think that's why they really wanted to focus on how the way they approached that scene. So I thought it was an interesting way to have put it, and I'm glad they kind of dug a little deeper into the Russian aspect, right? Because it's kind of delved into in the series itself because of Kuze's own interest in Eastern European and Russian culture.
And that he had met the one person which we know who she likely is, that it was a childhood friend when he was younger and she was Russian. And that's what kind of got him to basically say, I want to learn this Russian and stuff like that. And then I think his grandfather liked watching all these foreign movies and stuff like that. And that had a part in it too.
And the grandfather is features in one episode as well. So that was really the extent of the Alia stuff. That officially. Right? That was officially the
and they reminded us the second season is coming next year in 2026.
Yes, and they haven't started on it. They haven't started recording.
We don't know when it'll be in 2026. It's like sometimes they say these things and it gets pushed back. It depends on the schedule for those studios, right? To either record or to get the animation because they may have another series they have to do before, right?
And the only thing, the notes on season 2, at least what to look forward to. Yes, more character development. Uesaka, for her part, has said, well, there's a couple beach episodes. She's looking forward to that. Which probably comes down to the yellow bikini that we see, the yellow bikini figure that we sometimes see we saw in the dealer's room. So I'll get to the stuff I bought later. So we move to the Q&A, and basically the fans lined up to ask questions. Yes, there were a few cringe moments. I hate to put that out there. There were. I mean, but those are inevitable, I think. So any particular questions that stuck out to you or things that stuck out?
Oh, I know you did quite a good question, stuff like that. And so I guess we could talk about that because I know you had said, and a lot of people had made note of maybe the connection, as you said, between the English and Japanese voice and stuff like that with their knowledge of Russian and stuff like that.
I did get a chance to ask one question, and maybe the answer was a stock answer, but I just wanted to see her reaction and just see how she would say it. As many of you know, Sarah Natocini plays Alia in the English dub of this. And Natocini, I'm sure many know, was the second person to play Ash. So she's the second English voice of Satoshi in Pokemon, right? And if you YouTube it, you'll see little bits from IGN or whenever press junkets, whenever she talked about the show coming out. And Natocini made it known that Natocini actually knows Russian. That's her first language, actually. Right? That's what she learned when she was a kid. So in many respects, maybe the role was tailor-made for her as well. Right? And our friend William Mu, who's the senior writer for Anime Trending, actually pointed me to his interview with her and about how she discovered the series and that she had seen Uesaka's performance before she started dubbing it. And that she actually thought her Russian was very, very good. So, and that she really enjoyed the role herself. So the question I had was, okay, so you know about your English counterpart for Alia, that she does the Pokemon role. So I just wanted to see what you thought of that. But really, my question was, have you met any of your counterparts in other languages, in English specifically, but other languages for the same roles? And if not, any curiosity in doing so, which is the dumbest question I probably could have come up with, because you know the answer. But she was so enthused about answering it that, yes, she would love to of course, meet her counterparts. But she joked. She wouldn't know what to say to them. She wouldn't be able to converse with them because she didn't know that Natocini knows Russian. And I just reminded her of that she didn't know that she knows Russian and you two could have a conversation for sure, which I thought was really cool. And then I suggested going to Niagara Falls because it didn't look like she still wanted ideas for tourist spots to check out in the area. But it didn't sound like Niagara Falls was in the offing. Actually, she joked with me. I brought up Niagara Falls and she said, "Isn't it cold there?" We had already hinted it was a little mild. But then again, regardless, it's Canada. Which I know, and I said that, and I know that got a bit of a chuckle out of the crowd. Yeah, it's just I thought it would be. I thought she'd get a kick out of. I thought she would have gotten a bit of a kick by me bringing that up, and I think she did for just a little bit. And she's also looking for a drink. Yeah, that was my question, and I'm glad I was able to ask that. So go through the notes. Shall I go through my notes again from the Q&As? And then
sure, if you want.
Something that comes up, you bring it up. You feel free, all right?
Sure.
All right. So Q&A. She was surprised how much energy was needed to be a voice actor.
And that's what we had talked about a bit
she
before
did
and stuff like that. The stamina and stuff like that. So she was a fan and stuff like that. And she had talked about that with other voice actors. And she's like, oh man, they are really a lot of stamina to get through that. And she said, I needed that for the Russian speech in the last episode and stuff like that, especially preparing with the sound director and the Russian coach. Idolmaster Bang Dream, is that how it's pronounced? Yeah, she's part of that series, and she's part of a few others. It's like that are popular and stuff like that. So it's definitely a lot of roles, obviously, recently and before and stuff like that. But some of the ones, like I do remember Alia, if I was talking to her, I would have asked her. I know she did the new, like when they did Yortse Yatsura, they recast everyone. So she was Lum in the new version, I believe, for that. And there was a question on that, I think, from someone.
I missed that, actually.
And then the other one was, I think I told you, Restaurant to Another World. She plays Aletta, which is one of the waitresses in the restaurant and stuff like that, which is interesting.
On the topic of food and cafes.
And that one's interesting too, because it reminded me, that one popped up in my head too, because remember, she was dressed up like a maid. So kind of like what she was dressed up in that role. Mm-hmm, so I think that she probably liked that role. I probably asked her a question about it.
And she was asked about her concept cafe. Mm-hmm, which I don't know I forgot the specifics, but it sounded like it sounded like quite the passion project for her. Mm-hmm. She was asked about, going back to Alia a little bit, she was asked about, how did she feel about every individual episode had a different ending song, and it was covers of it was all covers, right? Mm-hmm. So she was asked about the covers, about doing that many, and she just said she had a lot of fun doing them.
And that was, one of the things where you start hearing, and then it's like, oh, this is going to be the same thing, because each time you saw a new ending, right? And you saw the joy from that, because she said she was a fan, obviously, of some of those things. And you think of Haruhi Suzumiya, and that was one of the songs she did cover and stuff like that.
She said that out of all of them, that was her favorite.
Mm-hmm, yes.
She dug into her impressions of the characters themselves. She of the Cujo sisters, she plays Alia, but then there's Masha, and she actually is a fan of Masha, the older sister, right? She was asked about Nana Mizuki, and she just refers to herself as a fan of hers, but she can outdrink her.
Yeah, no, we did hear that. Outdrink.
And she's looking for. That's why I joked she's looking for a drink, right? As for tips on learning other languages, she just said have a love for it. That probably drives you through a lot. About any other roles that she's gotten into recently, she said she's having fun with 100 girlfriends who really, 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 really love you. I think I got at least one really off. And she just wants to stay in this role forever. She just loves voice acting, so she would love to stay in it for the rest of her career.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, just trying to. I wrote the words "easy love" and Nagatoro. So that, but Miss Nagatoro, she plays, right?
Mm.
Haku Momoi, I think, is her inspiration. She wrote because I think she was asked about her. Yes, had fun with the multiple covers in Alia. She was asked about the relationship between Yuki and Alia, and her line was probably so Alia, which was she does see them as rivals. She does sees them as rivals, and like. She thinks that Alia looks at Yuki as a rival, but conversely, Yuki looks at Alia as both a rival and somebody to tease. That's what she said about Yuki. Yeah. But her approach to the dynamic is when she plays Alia and looks at Yuki, the mentality is, I won't lose. And that's how she approaches playing Alia when it comes to Yuki. Right, that's I guess that goes in for tone and approach. Mm-hmm. She likes doing scary faces for such scenes. So I guess she can be very expressive in the studio. And yes, I did write. Would love to meet her English counterparts. That's the last note I wrote. But that was that was some notes I was able to make during the Q&A. Mm-hmm. And then came the best part, and the part that I'll forever be talking about: the autographs.
Yeah, I think they said it went from 1 to 2:30 for that panel that we just talked about, and then I think it was supposed to start at about either 3:30 or 4 or something like that. Either an hour and a half. Bit of time for her to kind of rest and stuff like that, and then do, I guess, the 90 minutes. But I think she came a little earlier to, she wanted to get a jump start and meet as many people as she could and stuff like that. But definitely once we left with a lot of the people, probably if we left just before, we might have had better luck. But there definitely was a line for the regular line. All the people that paid a premium price probably got their autograph, no problem. And I don't think, so before, in the previous one, Anime Toronto, it was you either got a free autograph on your badge or you basically had, I forget what the price was, but you had the Japanese guest and you basically got signage and whatever on the board or something like that.
A shiki board.
Yeah, shiki board. And so it sounds like for this one, it was just the board that you had to pay, and I think it was $30 is what they said you paid for the board, and then you got the autograph on that and stuff like that, and that's how they were going. Now, I know in the first IFF, they actually allowed you to bring something like whether it was from one of the series and that they would check in, then you could get signed for the Fate ones. But I know, obviously, with how things have went for conventions with Funko Pops and with people that are just trying to rush to get autographs that I guess they're reselling and stuff like that, and to combat some of that, I guess AniRevo, and I know they've done it at their Vancouver thing, this is how they've, I guess, decided to combat that and stuff like that, is that for those premium guests, they're going to do, I guess, a cost that they'll give you the board, and then you basically get the autograph and you can speak to them for a bit and stuff like that, depending on the guest that comes over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 6 years ago, Kawashima Ayako was there. Mm-hmm. And she was in Ayori Yoshi, so I got an art book signed from Ayori Yoshi. That was my thing. Other times you can do a photo op. They didn't offer a photo op this time around.
Yeah, there was no photography. They were very clear about that. in the panel and then in the autograph line that if they saw anyone even like doing what looked like a photo, that they probably would give them a warning. And then if they saw it again, they probably would kick you out of the convention, so to speak.
Or at least the line.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I think we already know what the answer was as to whether or not James and I were able to get an autograph.
We were close by a whisker.
Yeah, one person ahead of you, James. I guess the upshot of doing the autographs, and yes, we waited stayed in the line the entire time. And we bolted for the line as best we could. As soon as the panel was over, and the lineup was already quite long. So if you stayed till the end of the panel, unless you were sitting at the back, you're probably out of luck to eventually get an autograph. Unless, of course, you paid for it. Mm-hmm. Really paid for it. And we had a few friends that did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, we had nice conversations with the people in line.
And I think we saw Takadera came down the line. We had a quick chat with him.
Chat with him. Yeah, we were able to talk with him for a couple minutes. And believe it or not, I thought his English is actually quite good.
Yeah, no, I thought it was quite fine.
You can certainly have a quick conversation with him, and it was nice. We exchanged a couple pleasantries there. I mean, this. Okay, did we? Are we bummed to not get an autograph? Yeah, would have been nice. But this was just so much fun. I had so much fun doing that. Just on that attempt, like it harkens me back. And this is the old man about to come out. Years ago, back in 2000, Simon, Neil's former roommate,
mm-hmm.
right? We lined up overnight to try and get a PS2 in the cold. We didn't get it, but but we certainly had a story about it's one of those stories we love to talk about. Or I'll still talk about to this day. And the experience of doing the Alia lineup, I have the same. It's the same sentiment. I wasn't upset. I just wasn't upset. Really upset. I was, as I said, bummed, but not devastated to not get an autograph.
And then everyone what they did after is that we all got to walk through basically there and then wave at her, and she waved us and stuff. And then after that, everyone went through. She then said a final goodbye to everyone, stuff like that, because there are a few people that said goodbye in a group.
And presumably off to the aquarium she went. That pretty much sums up the Sumire Uesaka appearance at
very very condensed. She was. It was very great. It was great to see that she was still in high spirits, and that I felt like it's hard to say whether she was pushing herself, but she definitely was giving positive vibes and stuff like that, even though they had quite a few roadblocks and stuff like that. And she did say she wanted to meet as many people as she could and stuff like that. That's what they said in a few of their statements in regards to how they were doing autographs and things like that. But at the end of the day, they did give a warning and stuff like that, because it probably happened on the fly. I think they sent out their release AniRevo on the day before they started, kind of saying, well, this is what happened. This is how we're going to go forward to make sure she meets as many people as she can. That unfortunately, she won't be doing much on the Friday, but she's going to have a very full Saturday.
Yeah, and you know what? Looking back, their communication, the way they talked, sorry about that. Just the way they communicated and keep people in the loop of that situation. I actually give Anime Revolution a lot of credit for the way they handled that. So, they weren't no fan, because I think they knew she was the main event.
Mm-hmm. She was one of their biggest draws.
She was the draw. She was the main event for that weekend. Many people were coming there to see her. And I think their disclosure on what was going on in that situation, I think they won if nothing else, a few brownie points. At least they did so with me.
Mm-hmm.
I can only, and in that sense, yes, I can only speak for myself, but I just thought they handled it really well. So, quickly, did you buy anything?
I looked around, both the Artist Alley and the vendors and stuff like that. There were some interesting things here and there, but nothing that screamed that I needed to buy it and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So,
in my case, I bought just 2 figures.
And I know, yeah, I definitely saw figures. I definitely saw art books and stuff like that.
You can buy an art book, yeah.
Yeah.
But I bought 2 Alia figures of all things to buy. But one of them was something I'd been considering for a little while, and I was happy with how much it was there. Another one was a little bit more impulse, but it's her dressed up in the date dress from episode 9.
Okay.
Okay, but in episode 2, like she tries on different outfits for Kuze
To see, yeah.
his reaction. But one of those outfits she chooses, and that's and she wore that in episode 9, and that's the figure I got. So and that was more impulse. I didn't think I'd get that one, but I just thought, okay. Now that I got a better look at it, sure. So that was the extent of my purchase. The setting. As I said, as we mentioned, it's the Metro Toronto Convention Center. It's the North Building. It's the same building where Fan Expo takes place. And as such, you have the connection to Union Station as well. And granted, it's a large distances to walk, and sometimes people like to rag on it. Sometimes.
I think it depends. It depends on, are you going through the path and stuff like that, because you then have to go through the South Building, or if you're fine with, if the weather is okay, and the weather was relatively okay during the weekend, you could walk outside and go on Front Street from Union to the Metro Convention Center, which is more of a straight line.
Yeah, which is more of a straight line, but if you want to stay sort of indoorsy, you had the Skywalk as well. The pathway that's often used from Union Station to Rogers Center.
Yeah, which is the path part. Yeah.
But partway through it is a side door to the convention center, which sits basically in the middle of the North and South Building, the corridor between the North and South Building, which usually is closed during Fan Expo, if I remember correctly. That entrance is actually sealed off during Fan Expo, but it was available. I just thought well of the experience. Like, granted, it's a lot to walk, but I couldn't really think badly of the experience, because you're able to, if you had to get something to eat, which we did. We had our dinner inside the Union Station food courts. And it's a similar experience we had last year with Anime Toronto. So all in all, I just thought I couldn't really think badly of the whole day, because I only went on the Saturday. And thumbs up or thumbs down for the experience for Anime Revolution.
I guess overall it's a good start. And we'll see where they go from here and stuff like that. But definitely a good start, and we'll see how it goes. And if they can still keep getting the guests and maybe grow it organically, hopefully that'll be good to see how they do compared to the others and stuff like that. And as you said, it's a question of where they want to place themselves. It's like end of November, maybe that does make sense and stuff like that. We don't really know what their plan was, because the other two that they were involved in, not fully, but partly, and you could see that with their stamp on it for IFF, that was an Easter weekend at the Metro Convention Center, and then Anime Toronto was the Labor Day weekend at the Metro Convention Center. And I think
a week after Fan Expo, actually.
Yep. And then that one as well was the one where basically they had, remember, they did have a date in mind, but COVID kind of put them on it. You know what I mean? They couldn't do anything. I think originally that Anime Toronto was supposed to be in July of 2020. That was where they were going for. But I don't know if they could do that or even do that timetable where the last Anime Toronto was, because Anime Revolution Vancouver, I believe, is usually at the beginning of August and around the Civic weekend.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
So that could hurt them either way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mind the November date. And from a logistical standpoint, there's some things that kind of go into each other with the Vancouver show. But boy, would they be spreading themselves so thin doing that, right? So that, I guess that's part of the question. I mean, from the Toronto standpoint, as a Torontonian, maybe I had a degree of appreciation for the November date because that's the halfway point to the next Anime North, right? So I can't say I hated the idea of it, but I'm not sure. There's I guess the questions of its viability in that sense are legit. I mean, they're fair questions. I'm not sure legit is maybe the best word, but it's a fair thing to wonder. For my part, marginal thumbs up, but probably because I didn't have the greatest expectations. Maybe there's a degree of, I don't know if jaded's the word I should use, and I don't know if that's necessarily a fair word, because considering what I've just said about the associations with IFF and Anime Toronto, because they make it once again they make it clear this is from scratch, although it's kind of hard to kind of escape.
And it's all their team, so to speak, making all the decisions and stuff like that. So we don't, even though some of the rapping, definitely we could see the Anime Revolution, inspiration, stuff like that, those last two events, we don't know how much of the event they were doing on other ends and stuff like that, which they now have full control over.
So, it's some of that shine or dents, I guess, are still there, are from the past, are still there, but not totally. They want to distance themselves, and I guess that's fine.
And the other thing is probably their big raison d'etre that they're probably going to hang their hat on is, we guarantee we're going to at least try and get one big Japanese guest for our convention and stuff like that, which is something that doesn't always happen with Fan Expo. And we thought they were going to have another second coming and stuff like that. But then once Anime NYC kind of went into that same weekend, it looks like everyone's probably going to go to New York City instead of Toronto. So it looks like basically Fan Expo is back at square one for guests there on the anime part. If there even is one, it's kind of blended into everything else in a way, right? Even though they say it's there. And
Anime North is a story in and of itself.
Yeah, and Anime North is more fan run and stuff like that. And there's different things that make it special and stuff like that. And they do get guests, but it all depends on how it goes for those guests and how the people they want to bring to Toronto and stuff like that is different than obviously what Anime Revolution plans to do.
Yeah. Well, as I said, and I think we've asked this before, and Kevin, I remember this. Does the presence of Japanese guests at a show like this, take Anime North off the hook over the same issue? And I remember Kevin said for now, yes.
Because it's a counterbalance, it's a nice counterbalance.
Or is it a wake-up call? Right? To that sometimes Anime North has to think about that. Well, here's the answer. Here's my answer. Anime North's still going to happen. They're still going to get the people in the, in the building and stuff like that for them. I would say Anime Revolution Toronto, as we said, it's a nice start, but then it's how do they continue that momentum to get the butts in the seat or the people into the building during those days and stuff like that. And that's still going to be a question mark for them compared to Anime North, where we know that is happening. It's just a question of the generational shifts and stuff like that, of what happens when people get older and maybe aren't going to come. How are we replacing those? And they've managed to do that so far over the past 25 years. Yes, but still changes will be abound there for sure. And what's the other question marks? Well, Fan Expo is not really in that equation, I guess, when it comes to anime fandom in this city now. Right? I mean, that's kind of an unfair that's kind of a tough statement to make.
And it's
but
kind
they
of
have their things too. It's worth noting. The One of a Kind show, Toronto, has begun. I think for this year, right? Guess who took it over? Informa took it over this year. So essentially, the parent company of Fan Expo has taken over the One of a Kind show, which is a really popular craft show that happens here around this point every year. So, you wonder, like, how much of a priority is the anime fan? You shrug your shoulders, but the fandom in this city seems to be content. Has a lot to work with right now.
And it's
of course they'll always want more.
And it's the question on the Fan Expo thing of they wanted to become basically the San Diego Comic-Con of Canada and stuff like that. And in a way they have, but in a way they haven't, because it does feel like, I think on the gaming side they have been gay, but I feel like definitely pop culture, they are getting stuff on the pop culture for Fan Expo, but San Diego Comic-Con, they do have the pop culture, the video games. Maybe Fan Expo could have a bit more of the video game, but the thing is they are getting anime guests at San Diego Comic-Con, and it's more on the manga side, but they are getting guests and stuff like that. So that's the thing that you would think, well, if you guys want to be basically San Diego Comic-Con of Canada, then how are you going to bridge that gap, right? And I guess they've decided to say, you know what, all the other parts probably are fine for us.
Yeah, well, the Anime NYC equation is part of it too.
And they are getting English voice actors for the anime side of Fan Expo, but it all depends on what people are looking for, right? So,
Anyway, we're about an hour 21 in. Do you want to quickly gloss over Game Expo before we go tonight?
I only went one day, so basically there wasn't much at basically Anime Revolution Toronto on the Sunday. So I decided to purchase a ticket cheaply just for the Sunday for Toronto Game Expo, which was at the X Grounds Better Living Center. They do get a few tiny guests and stuff like that. They basically are a biannual event. So they do November and then March. And so it's funny enough that they're going to grow again. They're going to go into the Anicare Center in next year in March and stuff like that in one of the halls and stuff like that. That's where the Switch event happens. So that's still on the X Ground, still near TFC, near BMO Field. So
actually adjacent to Coca-Cola Coliseum, actually. Right? Anicare Center is connected by the same hallway.
Yeah, where they were at Queen Elizabeth Building, and then this one where I went at the Anicare, the thingy. No, it's
Better Living
Center.
you.
So see, I was thinking the food building in my brain. I'm like, that's not right. There's so many buildings you're used to going through the X. Sometimes they merge together in your brain. But yeah, on the other side of BMO Field is where Queen Elizabeth and Better Living is. So that they had been there, and so they've really grown and stuff like that. And for them in the Better Living, it's interesting that they took that whole building, which is a fairly big building. It was wide aisles to walk through for the artist alley, the vendors and all that stuff. And then they have like a main stage at the back and stuff like that where they have panels with some of the guests. The guests actually, you can just walk up to and see if they're at their like guest area and stuff like that they have on one part. And then they do have a gaming area where you can play different retro games and stuff like that and Duck Hunt. And I think some people from Anime North, the gaming side, kind of help out with that because they did have Anime North things there to let people know that is coming up next year. And then they had an indie section where some different indie devs were basically showing off their games, which was interesting to see. In regards to the show, like as I said, they seem to be filled. Like there wasn't any empty tables for people for the vendors on the gaming side. There wasn't any empty ones for what looked like the artist alley for any of the crafters or even the cosplay people selling cosplay type stuff. And there was quite a lot more variety than what I saw at the Artist Alley of AniRevo Toronto. But we'll see what happens. But that's a good thing, I think, because I was wondering if it would cannibalize either of them. If it's like, okay, do I go there this weekend or do I go the other thing? The other, you know what I mean? The other event. But it looks like people made a choice and everyone hopefully came around happy and stuff like that on that end.
Yeah, I think hopefully people got what they were looking for either way.
But the two guests I ended up seeing for the panels on the main stage, and then I went to shake their hand. Basically, I didn't even have to get in line. I just went to where they were and talked to them. So you could just talk to them. It was fine. So it was Michael Benyer, who played Bob on Reboot. That's where most people remember him from. So he had a panel. It was interesting, him talking about being Bob and then the different video game roles he did and stuff like that, and animation roles he had done, because he's now kind of splits his time between Vancouver and LA, I believe, and stuff like that. And he talked about how some of his roles in Vancouver led to him getting the visa to be able to get jobs in LA and stuff like that in animation, which is interesting to hear. Like, I know, obviously, he talked about Reboot the most and stuff like that, which was, he talked about getting that role, and that, obviously, remember, Reboot was ahead of its time for animation, computer graphics and stuff like that. And he said it was incredible to see that. And there is I know, what was a documentary they had done a year or two ago that he's involved in, like, from the fan community, that really dives into it and is interesting. But I know he talked about how it was interesting. He got the role and stuff like that. And the person that was, he says, oh, I kind of sound like that. And then they said, oh yeah, you kind of do. And he gave his takes on that and was able to get that role. And he said he was playing the character, but what he liked about that, and he said it's rare in any of those animation roles, is as he was playing Bob through the years, they kind of started to tailor the writing and all that other stuff kind of to him and his voice in some aspects. So he said it kind of, the character grew with him, which was kind of interesting and stuff like that for Bob.
Since we just talked a lot about the Japanese side.
Mm-hmm. And then, so that was fun saying hello to him. And then on the anime sphere, if you want to think about him as well, for Michael Benyer, I think the biggest one was because he was doing some of the earlier roles at Ocean. I think Ranma 1/2. That was probably some of his bigger roles were in Ranma 1/2, the old series and stuff like that. So when Ocean did that. So, but anyway, so it was interesting hearing his stories. But then the other one I saw, which a lot of Canadian kids remember from the 90s or the early 2000s, was Nicolas Pickles.
Oh.
So he was interesting. His panel was interesting listening to him. And then it was funny, actually, because I went to Michael Benyer later, but for Nicolas Pickles, I went over and said hello to him. We had a great conversation, stuff like that. And then I went to his panel, and after his panel, because he would come around, he just patted me on, oh, nice meeting you, James, and stuff like that, which is always nice when you're at those smaller events and those little things happen. But even if they're smaller, right? But they mean something to someone, even as they said, both of them. But Nicolas Pickles, most people remember him from YTV, from Video and Arcade Top 10 and stuff like that. And that was on the air like 15 years, from 1991 to about 2006, so 15-year run. And he had a lot of interesting things to say about that and YTV, about what obviously that was part of his role and stuff like that. But some of the interesting things was he was doing other things. So while he was doing that at one point, the later years of Video Arcade Top 10, he was running a nightclub in Ontario somewhere. He was doing, and he's still doing, the morning show in Buffalo for KISS 98.5.
Oh, still is after all these years?
Yep, he's still doing
30 years.
Still doing, and
at least 30 years.
And then at one point, he was doing in-game music and stuff like that for the Buffalo Sabres for 10 years. Guess who he's doing in-game music for now?
The Bills?
Yes, the Buffalo Bills. So he's doing that for Buffalo Bills, and he's still doing DJing and stuff. He was joking that because I was talking to him about the Bills and stuff like that too, so he enjoyed talking about that when I was talking to him one-on-one, like at his area for the guests. But I know he was talking about in the panel, one of the 5 things he said, yeah, I'm still doing DJing and love music and stuff like that. And he said, I guess the Goo Goo Dolls had come to Buffalo a few weeks ago or something like that, and they didn't have an opening act. So he just opened up for the Goo Goo Dolls and stuff like that. He said it was a 90s night. But he had really interesting stories, especially on the radio side, because he said he had done radio, obviously, before KISS, and it was in Canada and stuff like that. So he jokingly made this thing saying that spite can sometimes take you a long way. So he said he was working at a music store on Yonge Street in the early 90s and stuff like that. And then one of his buddies who was in Australia, he said he went back to Australia, he's doing well, but he said he went in and walked in. It's 102.1 The Edge now, but it used to be 102.1 Spirit of Radio and stuff like that. And supposedly that was his favorite station, right? Nicolas Pickles. So his Australian buddy working with him in the record store goes into 102.1 Spirit of Radio at the time, gets a job, just walks in and gets a job. And he's like, Spite took me a long way because he's like, what the bleep? If he can get a job, they're just hiring anyone. I should just walk in and get a job, right? So he supposedly walks in to 102.1 Spirit of Radio, and they just give him something and just give him a job as an on-air personality and stuff like that. And that's kind of his start in radio, as he said. And he enjoyed doing that as well. And that kind of led to the Video and Arcade Top 10, to the YTV gig and stuff like that. Like, it was interesting, his story. And then he joked, he said, the lady that basically had him fill out the form and do all that for when he was going into the radio station ended up managing the Bare Naked Ladies and is now doing PR for Michael Bublé, or his, you know what I mean, his communication, some of that. Which is, he's like, yeah, so people really went up, and he obviously talked about some of the YTV personalities like PJ Paul, which he said he called Paulie Clips because he did the show Clips on YTV and stuff like that.
Which was a spin-off of Video and Arcade.
Yeah, and I think he also had said that, like, for that one, he was proud of him, because I remember after he left YTV, because he worked his way up there, I think he went CTV and was doing the entertainment stuff.
He was more known as an entertainment reporter later.
Before he ended up that Ben Mulrooney took over from him, and then supposedly went to CMT is where he's working now, I believe. So that's, I think, country music television or whatever they're calling it now. And
Janice Mackey is another former YTV personality. She was, and I know she became more of a journalist. Mm-hmm. So it's worth noting now that both YTV and CFNY 102.1, they're both owned by Chorus.
Yeah, no, they're both owned by Chorus now, but yeah, it probably.
Or I think Chorus, or at least its former the former owners. They always had common owners, I think.
Yeah, similar, but yeah, it was interesting. But no, he was talking about some of that, which was fun. But the other fun thing was him being the main host and stuff like that. So most people remember Nicolas Pickles, and then the joke down below is like, is that his real name and stuff like that? That basically he was the main host for most of those 15 years. Now, that first season, as he joked, he said, I wasn't the main host for half of that first season. It was some other fella that most of us forget, and I forget his name, but he said that. And then he said, well, one day, I guess they didn't show up or whatever, and then the guy that created Video and Arcade Top 10 just said, Nicky, you're standing there. You're standing there. And so he said, I got to do this now. So he says that's what he was doing and stuff like that. And he told many stories about how that show was at where Liberty Village, where YTV originally was, only 1 year of the 15 years. He said they took that studio, like everything they had for it, and they traveled. Supposedly, he said, I think they were either in Woodbridge or Vaughan at some points. But then at one point, he said they were basically in Burlington and Hamilton shooting there and stuff like that for a number of those years, which was interesting. But he said that was good for him, because if he was doing the morning show and all this other stuff and doing the nightclub, he said he's like, as long as I was in my car, I could get to where I needed to go. And he said they would always do like either a Saturday or Sunday. And so they did all those episodes, right? With the same crowd of kids and all that for one day and stuff like that. So it was a long shoot and stuff like that to get through that.
And then the commute from Buffalo, yeah.
Well, he said he was right on the border, so he's probably on Fort Erie and stuff like that. He literally said right on the border.
Well, that sounds like the late voice of the Buffalo Sabres, Rick Jeanneret. That sounded like Rick Jenneret's story.
But
he lived all his time. Like he lived in I think St. Catharines.
But it was interesting. Like he told stories like the fella who created Video and Arcade Top 10, he had been in television, he'd done all these other things, and he was in New York City. And then he had the idea for this because he saw video games, obviously with Nintendo and all that, and even Sega coming up, that it was an interesting thing they could do for a game show. And for whatever reason, decided instead of doing it in the New York or the US market, he thought would work better in the Toronto market or something like that, and then worked with YTV to make it happen. So both of them were part owners, so to speak. And somehow, I guess, YTV had a connection and made a connection with Nintendo because, as most people know from that show, Nintendo was a very big sponsor and most of their games were in that show that people competed against.
There were a few like American-based video game shows.
And there definitely
was. In the early 90s, right? I mean, this was a very... Video and Arcade Top 10 was a very Canadian show.
No, it definitely was of its time, as we said.
They were. That's
why it's like, and as you say, yeah, many people said the same thing to him, that it definitely was something that gave them a bit of joy or something like that, or something fun to watch right on the weekend. And so, yeah, it was funny too. He said he had spoken since he was in for the Saturday Sunday, the night before on the Saturday. He was talking to some YTV alum and some people that had worked with him at Video Arcade Top 10. He says, you never know what's going to happen when you're having a conversation with people and stuff like that, because he found out that night that no one had ever told him or offered him, the fella that ran that show, he's passed on now, he said, but basically to some of the other people, personalities and that were there, he offered them to put them up for a night in a hotel and stuff like that. And he said, yeah, it isn't like they were putting them in the Hyatt or they weren't putting them in some luxury hotel. It was just like the Days Inn or whatever, something Motel simple.
6, right?
Yeah. And he's like, what the heck? It's like, why couldn't he offer me that? Because he said sometimes I would do whatever and then I would come check in on the nightclub and stuff like that because he did DJing and stuff like that and still does some now, he said, especially probably with him doing the thing with the Bills music and stuff like that. But he would come in, go back home, have an hour or two of sleep, and then go across the border and work his way, I guess, to Hamilton, Burlington, or wherever the studio had moved to. And he said, yeah, that probably would have been nice to give me an extra hour's sleep. But he said, yeah, he's like, nice. You never know what you're going to hear from someone.
How old is the man now? He must be in his 60s.
No, I don't think he's that old. He's got to be in his, 50s? I want to say...
Late 50s?
Probably 50s. But he has kids and stuff like that. So I'd say in his 50s. But because he was probably in his 20s when he was in the 90s and stuff like that. But yeah, he still looks pretty darn good for his age and stuff like that. So
not bad. Well, I'm glad. Well, it's interesting because I used to listen to the Kiss Morning Show every so often. They got into good trouble at times there too. Yeah,
just like 102.1 The Edge. They had the long running morning show and they had the shock jock and all that, and they got into trouble. And then the one thing that undid them, you're just like, wow, that's what did them in.
I know he's been. I know Nicolas got suspended in the 90s for a Neiman Marcus stunt. But when that was a thing back then.
Yeah, but he loved that station, so he enjoyed being on that one. Yeah,
he's still there. So he must have done something right.
Well, now he's on Kiss and that in Buffalo. So yeah, he moved on from there. And
no, it was Kiss.
It was Kiss that day? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
He's been there. That's why I said 30 some odd years.
Yeah, no, I knew he'd been there. But I was saying that's where you did that one on Kiss.
I remember listening
okay.
that night. Mm-hmm. I remember listening that morning, driving down to York. Mm-hmm. When he and his co-host got suspended. Mm. She was the main host. He was the co-host. Mm-hmm. But that's an interesting story in and of itself.
But no, he said he still enjoys doing something like that with the radio and that, and it's kind of like his comfort space and stuff like that. But he had
kind of like us doing audio for a podcast, right?
Yeah, no, he probably would have been an interesting thing if you wanted to talk about radio or other things or.
That would have been, you know what? When you put in those terms, maybe I would have loved to chat with him for a few minutes too.
Yeah, no, definitely. You could just walk up, say hello to him, and if you want a picture or an autograph, I think both of them were willing and stuff like that. I think what was it, Michael Benyer and stuff like that. He had this one thing that some fans had helped him create because he said it was like just Guardian Bob, life size, that he could stand beside, and then you as the person could stand beside both of them. You know what I mean? If you want.
Yeah.
And he said the inspiration was, it was a transit thing in Vancouver. You know how they have the posters and all that in the bus hubs and stuff like that. Supposedly he saw that there and said he wanted to try and obviously take that out or one for himself, but he was never able to find someone who knew, like, you know what I mean, a copy or something like that. Right. So someone was able to, I guess, engineer one for him over the recent years, you know what I mean, which is nice.
Yeah, would have been. Anyway, sounded like an okay show. And I noticed you did get the literature to promote Anime North 2026.
Yeah, that was from the retro gaming section, stuff like that, where you could free play some different games and stuff like that. So I think the gaming side of Anime North has a little help, but I thought the first bullet point I had to show you that because it was interesting. All the others are normal, but the first one was like, I left a question mark in my head, but...
North America's largest cosplay contest. Okay.
Like, I think it's definitely one of the largest. Like, we know how big that event is and stuff like that. It's a main event every Saturday and stuff like that. Every year they've done it. I know they have the ties to, was it the World Cosplay? It's one of the things where you could qualify and stuff like that. They've done that over the years. And so it's interesting to say it's the biggest because I feel like Anime Expo or one of the others, there's got to be someone else in my mind that I feel would maybe be a touch bigger. But maybe I'm wrong. Definitely the biggest in Canada.
Live music, DJ, stage show, yes. Guest star speeches and autographs. Well, when the stars start to clear up, right? Giant vendors hall and artist market. Yes, they do. Game shows, contests, cosplay cafes, video gaming, tabletop, LARP. I don't know what LARP stands for. Or role-playing games. Workshops, panels, and demos. May 24th to 26th, 2026 at the Toronto Congress Centre and Delta Toronto Airport Hotel, Canada's top not-for-profit fan event.
And that one and that one we've already seen. They've said for a number of years where they're the top not-for-profit fan-run event, and being fan-run, which, as we said, is great in many ways, but then other ways it's like, you take the good and the bad, right? As we've always said.
No such thing as just all good and just all bad. At least that's the way I've come to learn life. Anyway, that's as much as we got. We really can't harp on. We've already said enough, and it would be just too weird now to talk Amazon.
Yeah, probably.
But I do want to let that simmer just a little bit, and I know there'll be an opinion on Amazon's use of AI in the near future. So
that's the real question that we'll have to see when we get to it is Banana Fish, and Banana Fish is exclusively still on Amazon. We know they had some other ones still streaming on there, like Wodakoi is still on there, I believe. And it was exclusive to them and is still exclusive to them unless someone else gets a license, you know what I mean, to do physical or whatever. But Banana Fish, that one was not, actually maybe it was Noitamina, but I think Aniplex is involved with that one too. So it's hard to say for that English dub that you're talking about, the AI English dub, since this is the first time we've seen, well, in a professional setting, at least they kind of, because if you go onto that site for Amazon Prime, for Banana Fish, it kind of does mention it, right? So at least they mentioned it. But it is interesting that first Amazon is okay with it, but did they produce it? Or did Aniplex or the Japanese side or whatever side that wasn't Amazon say, okay, let's try something, let's do something for an English dub that we can do within our reason, whether we agree with it or not, and see how this AI experiment would work out. And then Amazon's okay putting it on. So there's so many moving parts that you really wonder about with that.
Who asked for what, basically?
and how do they make the voices and stuff like that? Because I'm sure some of the voice actors are going to be like, did you mimic my voice? Or, you know what I mean? Have you been using my voice so that you can feed it into something to then create something for something else, right?
It's probably and those will be the questions that we have to answer, I guess. Well, I mean, there's AI involvement going on, and the story will just keep going.
Well, we've already heard the stories with manga and stuff like that, and the different things.
Novellis is one that has my attention, quite honestly. Like that's that because I'm curious about it, but knowing the AI aspects of that, a manga up keeps me occupied anyway. Oh, just quickly, recent reads and watches. Where are you on that? One or two shows.
Not too much to really say at the moment and stuff like that. It was just, as I said, we went to the shows and stuff like that. I did watch Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl, which I talked about, and
2 weeks ago. And that's
it was interesting on that one, as we had said that there was a bit of controversy with some people, I guess in the States or wherever, that we knew, as I had told you, that it was mostly the documentary stuff like that, 30 minutes for the actual show. I'm not sure if Fathom, who had put it on with Aniplex, hadn't put it out like how they said it in the thing for the theaters and that. But some people weren't happy that the actual show was only 30 minutes, and some just supposedly had walked out and got a refund or complained in that. So it's interesting on that one. But the other one I told you was Angel's Egg. So I ended up a week later. Yeah. I went to the theater. I paid full price this time. So instead of paying $10, I paid, I guess, whatever the full price was.
Don't forget your popcorn.
Well, no, I didn't get popcorn. And I watched Angel's Egg, which was 71 minutes. So that's still pretty short, but it was still an interesting one because that's one people didn't think was ever going to get outside Japan and stuff like that. That was Otomo. And then the fella, remember from Final Fantasy and stuff like that, Amano and stuff like that, Yoshitaka Amano. And both of them, that was before their big hits. That was before Akira. That was before Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger and stuff like that. And it was the bubble and his, sorry, it wasn't Otomo. It was Oshii, Mamoru Oshii. Sorry, it was Mamoru Oshii was the one who was the anime side. So that was before his big things like Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that. But for Mamoru Oshii, it was interesting that he said they'd done a preview, a screening or whatever of the 4K version a week before us and that, and he did a little talk in that. And he supervised the 4K restoration, but he said it was interesting that basically the people that produced it, basically, he only went in and spoke to them for 2 hours. They gave him some money, and then he basically created with Amano this film and stuff like that. And it's definitely unlike anything you could see and stuff like that. You have the iconic Amano designs and stuff like that. There's only really 2 characters. There is limited like voice work, but there's still lots. So you definitely do need those subtitles and stuff like that to understand certain parts of it. But it's definitely a very different film compared to normal anime and stuff like that. It's very artistic and stuff like that, very unique and stuff like that. As we said, the big premise is the egg. It's like if a person comes and takes your egg, and they say, hey, make sure you take care of your egg. Do you trust that person not to steal your egg again and break it? That's the question in core. I think you got to think about that.
I have to look that up.
There's so many egg jokes.
For me, I did finish Fragrant Flower Blooms with dignity because the last episode came out last Sunday, at least for the rest of the world.
The rest of the world, yeah. It was a little behind. It was a delayed cast, right?
Yeah, it was a delay cast, which I know people have a big issue with it. And it made me reflect on binging and then seeing episodes weekly. So I was always I understood why they did the weekly thing, but I liked the bit. But if I want to binge, I'd like to have that opportunity. So in many respects, I personally, because the show became so compelling to me, I was glad I waited as long as I did to eventually watch it. Because I finished it I did the series in less than 2 weeks, I think, because I was watching.
You built it up, yeah.
I just built it up and just waited until enough of the series had come out, and I think I finished it within a little over a week. Watching 2 episodes a day or something on the commutes. The manga up stuff, still been reading on that. Enjoyed it. I started reading The Girl I Saved on the Train was my childhood friend, which is based on a light novel, but I'm reading the manga version. Basically any of my anime watching is stuff that is based on light novels too. So I'm reading manga and anime that seems to have its base in a light novel these days, because of my fascination with reading light novels a little bit more.
And there is obviously a mix over the past number of years, and even before COVID, that, it wasn't just manga and it wasn't just video games. Light novels obviously became a big source for, content and stuff like that. And a part of that, I guess, was isekai and stuff like that, because that was one of the things that a lot of them on the sites where the authors would put on, chapters for free and stuff like that.
Be a novelist. Which is the base for a lot of them. So it's either isekai or rom-com. I guess I'm a sucker for those, for the latter at the very least. So maybe another time I'll mention a little bit more, go more extensively on the titles I'm reading. Anyway, but we said enough. Do this again in a couple weeks?
We'll see what we can do, or you can find someone else.
Oh yeah, I can find someone. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Mo's been kept in the loop. Amy, Kevin, they're all kept in the. We all keep them in the loop. We keep everybody in the loop.
Of course,
around the table, just what we're up to. So, and there are a few things maybe to talk about with the others. Maybe a few things that are of note to talk about in the very near future. So let's. Well, we'll do this. I'm hoping we do this again in a couple weeks. I do, even if it's a stream, because maybe I want to open up another set of figures too. Whether it's the 2 blue boxes or the 2 alias.
I was going to say the alias, yes.
One or the other. Maybe somebody will help me choose. Anyway, thanks for doing it again. Thanks for doing this again. Maybe maybe it is you in a couple weeks.
Of course. We'll see.
Yeah, and maybe this time we'll be doing it back remote. But that's it. Let us know what you think wherever you're watching or listening to this, either in the comments down below, if you're seeing this on YouTube, or animeroundtable.com, or our socials at Anime Roundtable. If you are seeing this on YouTube, do us a favor, give us a thumbs up. It greatly helps us as a whole. And do another favor, one final favor. Give us a subscribe on YouTube, a follow on Twitch, and a bookmark wherever you get your podcasts. That way you'll definitely know whenever we put something up. Also, if you're on Spotify, we do have a playlist. We do have a playlist of songs based on stuff that we do talk about. So why don't you check that out as well?
Are you gonna update with some more Alia influence?
Well, I've only put up just the opening song. I didn't put up any of the covers. AnimeRoundtable.com. We mentioned it right now. It links to the Linktree site. We will. There is a change coming. Maybe that's something we'll tell you about in a couple weeks' time. But check that out. Thanks again, James. Thanks for coming over this time around for this.
Are you sure you weren't talking to yourself for this whole hour and a half or however long we've been talking?
Well, yeah, I mean, it could have been an AI, yes. But we got the rest of Saturday to enjoy. So we'll go enjoy ours. You go enjoy the rest of your time too, whenever you're listening to this. And thanks for listening in.